The letter came on the morning Vera Salt was setting type for a dead man's obituary. She had the compositor's stick in one hand and the copy in the other. 12 lines about a mill owner from Carlisle who had died of gout and left 4 daughters and a disputed will. When the boy knocked at the back door of the print shop and slid the envelope under it without waiting to be answered. She knew by the seal it was not a bill. The wax was pressed with a running stag. She had seen that seal once before, on a letter her father had witnessed when she was 9 years old. Her father had said afterward that the Hawick family did not write to people like them unless the matter was urgent. He had said it with the particular voice he used when he did not mean it as a compliment. Vera set down the stick. She opened the envelope over the compositing table so that no letters fell into the type tray. Mrs. Salt, it read. My brother the Earl of Hawick is gravely unwell. The physician who attended him has not returned in 4 days. His steward writes that you are known in the town as a person of sound judgment and medical knowledge. I write on behalf of the household. Please come, there is no one else. F. Hawick, Dunmore Lodge. She read it twice. She set it down. She picked up the compositor's stick again and looked at the 12 lines about the mill owner. Then she put the stick back in its cradle, took off her apron, folded it over the back of the chair, and went to tell her mother-in-law she would not be home for supper. What she did not know, walking up the lane to where the Hawick carriage waited on the main road, was that she would not see the print shop again for 19 days. She did not know that a second letter was already written and waiting in a desk drawer in Dunmore Lodge, ready to be sent to a magistrate in the morning if she had not come. She did not know, and did not think to ask, why the physician had stopped coming. She only knew she had her bag, and the rain was starting, and the carriage door was being held open by a girl whose hands were shaking. The girl's name was Peg Dorin. She was 17 and had been in service at Dunmore Lodge since she was 14. And she did not stop talking for the full 4 miles of road between the town and the house. Vera let her talk. She had learned, in 6 years of attending births and setting bones and sitting with the dying when no one else would, that a person who talked without stopping was a person who was afraid of what silence left room for. Peg talked about the Earl, who had been well at harvest and was not well now. She talked about the physician, Dr. Fenwick, who had come 3 times and then not come again. She talked about Mr. Alt, the steward, who wrote the letters and kept the books, and had been, Peg said, very busy of late. She said this, and then said she should not have said it, and pressed her mouth together and looked out the window at the passing dark. Vera filed it and did not comment. Dunmore Lodge was not what she had expected. She had expected the kind of house that belonged to an earl. Long windows, formal gardens, footmen. What she found was a house that had shed most of its staff the way a dog shed a winter coat, slowly and without ceremony, until there was not much left. 2 indoor servants besides Peg, a groom, an under-gardener who was also apparently doing the work of the groundskeeper, Mr. Alt, who came to the door of his own office on the ground floor and looked at her with the expression of a man measuring a parcel for the post, and the woman who had written the letter, Frances Hawick, the Earl's younger sister, who was standing at the top of the stairs and came down them very fast and took Vera's hand in both of hers. She was perhaps 30, fair-haired, and wearing mourning that was not quite fresh, not quite recent. 6 months old, Vera would have said, maybe 7. Our mother, Frances said, reading the look. In the spring. She did not say anything else about it. She said, will you come up? Vera came up. The room smelled of camphor and of a fire too long unattended, and of something underneath that she recognised and did not name yet. The Earl of Hawick, Dominic Hawick, she had looked up the name on the carriage ride, was on the floor beside the bed, not unconscious. He had his eyes open and one hand flat on the boards, as if he were taking the temperature of the room. He was perhaps 35 and had the bones of a man who had been, until recently, in good health, and the colour of a man who was not in good health now. Vera crouched beside him. She set 2 fingers to his wrist. I am Mrs. Salt, she said, from Hartley. I am going to move you to the bed. I was, he said in the bed. His voice was dry and even. I preferred the floor. The floor is cooler. The floor is also not a good place for a man with your pulse to spend the night. She looked at Frances. I will need the other side. Between them, they got him back to the bed. He did not make it easy. He also did not make it harder than it needed to be, which Vera noted. He was the kind of man who, even badly unwell, observed the effort being made on his behalf and declined to waste it entirely. She had met that kind of man twice in her practice. They were not the worst patients. She sent Francis for cold water and a lamp and anything left from supper. She sent Peg to sleep. She stayed. His pulse was wrong. She measured it twice to be sure, irregular in a way that was not the ordinary irregularity of a man who had been lying on cold boards for an indeterminate number of hours. His pupils were not quite matched. His hands, when she checked them, had a faint tremor that went away when he concentrated on stilling it, and came back when he forgot. She had seen one case of foxglove poisoning in her life, a farmer's wife who had taken it herself, and had told Vera beforehand so that Vera could help her do it slowly. That case had looked like this, not exactly like this, but close enough that Vera went back over the last hour in her mind, the smell of the room, the colour of the dregs in the cup on the bedside table, and said nothing yet. She had a suspicion she would not say it until she was sure. By midnight the fire was up, and Francis had fallen asleep in the chair in the corner with her head against the wall. The Earl was awake. He had been awake for 2 hours, drifting in and out of a light and unreliable consciousness that Vera had been talking him through the way you talked a boat through shallow water, steadily, without drama, with one eye always on the depth. "You are a printer," he said at some point after 11. "My husband was a printer. She was changing the cloth at the back of his neck. I helped him. When he died, I kept the shop." "How long ago?" 4 years. He was quiet then. "Children?" "A son. He is with my mother-in-law. She wrung out the cloth. He is 4. His name is Kit. Christopher, after his father." She set the cloth back. "Rest." He rested. She stayed. Francis woke at 3, looked at the bed, looked at Vera, and said nothing, which was the most useful thing she had done yet. By the 4th day, the Earl could sit up without assistance. By the 4th day, Vera had also learned the following, that Miss Alt had been the one to suggest summoning the physician, and had been the one to dismiss him when the physician had suggested a second opinion, that the physician's name was Fenwick, and that he practised in Carlisle, and had offered, when dismissed, to send a colleague, and that the offer had been declined, that there was a brother, not a twin, not a close brother, a half-brother from the Earl's father's first marriage, named Lucian Harwick, who was currently in Edinburgh and had been written to, and who was expected within the week. She learned that the Earl's name was Dominic. She did not use it. She called him Your Lordship, and he called her Mrs. Salt, and they were, by the 4th morning, the kind of strangers who have spent 4 nights in the same room and are no longer strangers, but have not yet found the word for what they are instead. On the morning of the 5th day, over a tray of broth and bread that Vera had thinned down from the kitchen herself, he said, "You have a suspicion I have. Tell me." "Not yet." He looked at her with the direct, unhurried look of a man who was accustomed to being told things when he asked for them, and had encountered very few people in his life who declined to do so. "You are being careful. I am being certain." She set down her spoon. "When I am certain, I will tell you. Until then, I will tell you that you are not to drink anything I have not poured, and you are not to eat anything that has not come through this room by way of Peg or your sister." The room was quiet. The fire snapped. "How bad?" he said. "I don't know yet. Approximate." She considered him a moment. "Bad enough that someone chose it. Not so bad that it has worked." She picked her spoon back up. "Eat." He ate. Francis came in while they were finishing. She looked at the tray, at the 2 cups, at the fact that Vera was sitting in the chair opposite the bed and not beside it, and said, "Lucian will arrive tomorrow." The Earl said nothing. Francis said, "He wrote from Carlisle. He will come through Hartley on the morning coach." Vera watched the Earl. His hand on the coverlet was very still. What did his letter say? That he was grieved to hear of the illness, that he would come at once. And Francis set the letter on the table, that there was the matter of the property in Westmoreland, that the question of its management would need to be settled given his word, uncertainty of your condition. The Earl looked at the window. Outside it was grey and wet, a November morning that had given up trying. "How many days," he said, since Alt wrote to him. The letter went 8 days ago. Francis paused. Before he wrote to Mrs. Salt, the Earl turned his head back to the room. He looked at Vera. Vera looked back at him. "How much do you know about Westmoreland property law?" he said. Nothing whatsoever, she said. But I know how to read a ledger, and I know where Mr. Alt keeps his keys, he said. How do you know that? I watched him go to the third drawer of his desk when he thought I was in the kitchen. She folded her napkin. I was not in the kitchen. He was quiet. She rose and took the tray to the door. Mrs. Salt. She stopped. Stay, will you stay? It was not framed as a question exactly. It came out the way his name for her came out, dry and careful, each word given its full weight. I have been staying, she said. Past tomorrow. She looked at the door. She thought of the print shop and the compositor's stick and the 12 lines about the mill owner, which were probably still in the tray waiting to be set. She thought of Kit with her mother-in-law, who was a capable woman and would not panic. She thought of Christopher, 4 years in the ground now, whose voice she sometimes heard in her head when she was setting type in the morning before anyone else was up. She thought about the third drawer of Mr. Alt's desk. Ask me again, she said, after your brother arrives. Lucian Harwick came the following morning in a hired chaise with a leather trunk and a manner that Vera recognized at the first sight of him. The manner of a man who believes the outcome of a situation has already been decided and is present only to confirm it. He was fair like his half-brother but narrower across the shoulders, and his face in repose settled into an expression of patient concern that did not quite reach his eyes. He came to the sick-room door and was told by Vera that his brother was resting. I'll wait inside, he said. You'll wait in the hall, she said. He is resting. He looked at her with the mild surprise of a man who had not recently been told to wait in a hall. And you are the medical attendant, she said it flatly and held the door. Lucian Harwick waited in the hall. When the Earl was sitting up and dressed and had been brought his tea by Vera personally, she let the brother in and took her own position in the corner of the room beside the cradle. There was no cradle, she corrected herself. She had only thought of it because she had been present at enough births that a room with a sick person and a visitor always arranged itself in her mind the same way, beside the window where she could see both the room and the drive. She had not met many men like Lucian Harwick. She had met some. She knew the shape of what was coming before he began to speak, because she had typeset enough legal notices to know the language of guardianship petitions and the language of property disputes and the language of a man who was going to argue that another man could not be trusted with his own affairs. He was kind. He was reasonable. He was, she would have said, genuinely distressed. He sat at the foot of the bed, and he used the word brother many times, and he said that the concern of the family, of which he was the only other member, now that their mother was gone, was for Dominic's well-being, first and foremost. He said that the uncertainty of the illness, and here he glanced at Vera, who said nothing, had raised questions about the management of the estate in the interim. He said there was a legal provision, a sensible one, a protective one, that would ensure the property in Westmoreland and the house in Edinburgh were not left unmanaged in the event that Dominic was. He chose the word carefully, unable. Dominic listened. His hands on the coverlet were still. His face was the face of a man who had known this was coming and had spent 4 days deciding how to receive it. He said, "What exactly are you proposing?" Lucian said, "Temporary guardianship, of the properties, not of your person. Simply of the assets, with the magistrate's office in Hartley acting as overseer. It is done all the time, Dominic. It is nothing unusual. When you are well, I am well. You have been on the floor of your bedroom. I have also been sitting up, eating, and speaking to you coherently for the past 20 minutes. The Earl's voice had not changed. It was the same dry, even voice he had used on Vera on the first night. I have a medical attendant who will speak to my condition. Lucian looked at Vera. His expression was polite, with respect. She is not a physician. No, Vera said, but I am the only medical person in this room who has actually examined him. Dr. Fenwick has not been here in 11 days. She kept her voice at the same register she used when she needed people to hear her through a door. Not loud, difficult to dismiss. His pulse is stronger than it was 4 days ago. He is keeping down food. He slept 6 hours last night. I will say so in writing, if that is useful. Lucian considered her. His patient concern had found something to be patient about. I am sure, he said to his brother, that Mrs. Salt has been very capable, but she is a townswoman, a printer's widow. The question here is a legal one and a medical one, and it deserves, Mr. Harwick, Vera stood. She had been sitting in the low chair, and she stood because this was the moment in a room when you either stood or you conceded the room. The question here is, who has been making your brother ill? That is the question I have been trying to answer for 4 days. When I have the answer, and I will have it, we will see who in this house is in need of a magistrate. The room was very quiet. Lucian said, "That is an extraordinary accusation. I have not made any accusation. I have described a question." She sat back down. "We will see what the answer is." He left before supper. His face as he went was still pleasant, still concerned. It was this, more than anything, that told Vera she did not have much time. That night she did not sleep at all. She sat at the small desk in the room they had given her, the housekeeper's old room, off the kitchen corridor, and she set out what she knew as she would have set type, one piece at a time, in order, until the line was full enough to make sense. What she knew: foxglove in the wrong dose, stopped a heart by making it work too hard in the wrong pattern. Laudanum slowed everything, including the heart, and a man taking both without knowing it would present exactly as the Earl had presented on her first night. She had sent a note to Fenwick, not through Alt, but through Francis, who had a cousin in Carlisle. She had not heard back yet. She needed to hear back. What she also knew: the teapot in the Earl's room had been cleaned since she arrived. She had checked 2 days ago, because the smell of the room on the first night had put her in mind of something she could not quite catch. She had gone to the kitchen and found the pot already scalded and dried and back in the cupboard. Peg had done it. Peg had done it because Mr. Alt had asked her to. She had not said this to anyone. She took out a sheet of paper and wrote a letter to a friend, not a medical friend, a printing friend, a woman in Carlisle who ran a small weekly circular and knew every tradesperson in the county. She asked her to go to Fenwick in person and ask what he had noted in his visits to Dunmore Lodge in November. She asked her to go also to Thwaite and Sons, who were the main dispensary in Carlisle, and to look at the account for Dunmore Lodge. She sealed the letter. She set it under the candle to dry. She went to the window and looked out at the drive and thought about the teapot. She thought about the fact that Lucian Harwick had arrived very quickly from Edinburgh, for a man who had been written to only 8 days ago, and who claimed to have received the letter in Scotland. Edinburgh was not 3 days from Carlisle by the coaching road. Edinburgh, if you set out the morning you received a letter from Carlisle, was 4 days, maybe 5. She thought about the day the Earl had gone down. She thought about when Alt had written to Lucian. She thought about the order of those two things. She blew out the candle. She was not ready yet, but she was close. The letter from Fenwick came on the 7th day, through Francis's cousin, who had ridden out herself rather than trust the post. Vera read it in the kitchen before anyone else was up. It was careful, the kind of careful a man wrote when he was not sure who else might read what he was writing. But it said, between its careful lines, that he had advised a different water source for the patient's morning teas. He had advised this on his 2nd visit. He had returned for a 3rd visit and been told by the steward that his services were no longer required. He had offered to send a colleague from Carlisle. The offer had been declined. He had, he wrote, retained his notes. He would bring them to any hearing that required them. Vera folded the letter. She put it in the pocket of her dress, beside the square of paper on which she had written what she knew. She was ready. Francis found her in the corridor outside the Earl's room. "Lucian is coming back," Francis said. "He sent word from Hartley. He will be here this afternoon with a man from the magistrate's office. He is calling it a welfare examination," Vera said. "Is your brother awake?" "He was reading when I last looked." "Good." She went to the door. She knocked once and went in without waiting, which was a liberty she had not taken before, and the Earl looked up from his book and saw something in her face that made him set the book down. "You know," he said. "I know enough." She sat. "I need to tell you several things, and then I need to ask you something. And the thing I am going to ask you will sound extraordinary, and I need you to hear it before you answer it." He folded his hands on the coverlet. "Tell me." She told him about the teapot. She told him about Fenwick's letter. She told him about the order of events. The letter to Lucian, the dismissal of the physician, the arrival time from Edinburgh that did not match the distance. She told him what she suspected had been in the cup, and why, and what it did to a heart over the course of several weeks, and what it would have done over the course of several more. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Alt," he said finally. "Not Lucian. Alt arranged it. The account at Thwaites is in the lodge's name. Alt is the one who manages those accounts. But Alt is a steward, not an heir," she paused. "Alt does what he is told by someone who has reason to want the account settled." Another silence. "You cannot prove Lucian directed him." "Not yet." She set her hands on her knees. "But if I can see the account at Thwaites before your brother arrives with his magistrate, I will have enough to ask the magistrate different questions than the ones Lucian has arranged for him to ask." She looked at the Earl. "I need to go to Carlisle now. This morning. I need to be back before 2. He looked at her for a long time. She had been looked at like this before. The appraising look of a person who was deciding whether to trust not the answer, but the person giving it. She had been looked at like this by women in labour, which was the circumstance under which people trusted each other most quickly and most fully, because they had no other choice. "I will send the groom," he said. "I need to go myself. The dispensary will show me the pages. They will not hand them to a groom." "Why will they show you?" "Because I know Jonas Thwaite from the trade," she said. "And because I will explain the situation clearly, and Jonas Thwaite has been a dispensary man for 23 years and has heard this kind of situation before and does not like it." The Earl looked at the window. The morning was grey and clear, the kind of cold that came off the fells in November, and did not apologise for itself. "Take the covered carriage," he said. "It is faster. Peg will know which horse." She was at the door, Mrs. Salt. She stopped. "You have not slept. I have slept enough." "You have not. I have heard you at that desk until 3 every night for a week." She did not answer that. She went out. The carriage road to Carlisle was 4 miles of fell and 2 miles of river valley, and Vera spent them with Fenwick's letter in her lap and her hands folded over it, watching the road. She thought about the account at Thwaites. She thought about Alt's keys. She thought about the teapot that had been cleaned too quickly, by a girl who had been told to clean it by a man who had not expected to be asked. She thought about Christopher, who had died of a fever in February, and who had been a good man with ink on his hands and a habit of leaving blocks of type in his pockets. She thought about Kit, 4 years old, whose voice had begun to sound like his father's in the particular register of a boy who wanted something and was trying to decide whether to say so. She thought, "I have been a widow 4 years, and I have managed. I have been afraid of nothing that was actually in front of me." She thought, "This is in front of me," she thought, "then I am not afraid of it." Jonas Thwaite opened his door at 9:10 and looked at Vera Salt on his step in a carriage coat and said, "Good God, Vera, come in." She came in. She sat at his counter. She told him what she needed. He looked at her for a moment and then went to his back room without a word and came back with the ledger for Dunmore Lodge and laid it open at November. She looked. He looked over her shoulder. Foxglove, a quantity of laudanum, foxglove again, all entered against the lodge account, all signed for by Alt. There was a second page behind November, a page for September and October. "Jonas," she said. "I see it," he said. His voice was the voice of a man who had been in trade long enough to have made mistakes, and long enough after that to have stopped making them. It began in September. She ran her finger down the column. September, October, the quantities increased. By November they had doubled. "This is when the old countess died," she said. "In the spring, April," Jonas said. "And then nothing until September." She looked at the page. "He waited 6 months," Jonas said. "Vera, do you need me to come to the magistrate? I need you to come at 2. I need you to bring this book, and I need you to swear to it." "I will bring the book," he said. "I will swear to it. I signed for the supplies in good faith, and I will say so." He closed the ledger and set his hand on the cover. "Alt has been coming here since the old Earl's time. I should have looked more carefully at what he was ordering." "You are looking now," Vera said. She was back at Dunmore Lodge by 12:30. She was back in the Earl's room by 1:20. She set the letter and the page of notes, and Jonas Thwaite's testimony on the table beside the bed. She told the Earl what she had found. She told him the dates. "September," he said. 6 months after your mother died." He was quiet. Outside, Francis could be heard on the stair. "If Lucian had the estate," Dominic said slowly, "and the property in Westmoreland. Our mother left it jointly, did you know that? Half to me, half to him. If I were found of unsound mind, or if I died, His half would be administered by him, and mine would fall to him as the only living relative. Yes, Vera said. He would need no other family. His voice was still dry, still even. She had learned over the past 7 days that this was not blankness. It was the way a man thought who had learned to keep the thinking separate from the telling. There is no other family, Vera said. There is Frances. He looked at her. Frances is my sister. She is not a blood relative of Lucian's. She has no standing in the property. She has standing as a witness. Vera set her hands on her knees. And she has been in this house for the past 3 weeks, and she has watched Mr. Alt, and she has a very good memory. I know because I have been testing it. She paused. Also, she is very angry, which is useful. The corner of his mouth moved. It was not quite a smile. It was the first time she had seen anything on his face that was not considered and deliberate. She looked away from it. There is also, she said, the question of what happens this afternoon. What do you mean? Lucian will arrive with a welfare examiner. The examiner will ask you questions designed to establish that you are not competent to manage your affairs. Lucian will have prepared him. She looked at the window. I need you to be very clearly competent. I need you sitting up, dressed, speaking in complete sentences, and in possession of documentation that tells a different story than the one your brother has arranged. She paused. I also need you to let me stay in the room. I would not ask you to leave. He will ask. His examiner will ask. She looked back at him. You will say that I do not leave the room, he said. I will say that you do not leave the room. She rose. Good, then let us get you into a proper chair. Lucian Harwick arrived at 2 o'clock with a welfare examiner named Mr. Parrish, who had a rectangular face and the careful neutrality of a man who had performed this function before and preferred to keep it orderly. He also had a clerk. Frances let them in. Vera stood at the top of the stair and watched them come in, and then went back to the Earl's room to stand at the window in the way she had stood at the window in rooms like this for 6 years. Not in the way, not out of it. The Earl was in the chair by the window. He was dressed. He had his correspondence on the table beside him and a cup of tea. Vera had poured it, and he looked like what he was, which was a man who had been unwell and was recovering and was managing his affairs from a chair instead of a desk as a concession to practicality and not to incapacity. Lucian came in. His eyes went to Vera first, then to his brother, then to the table, where Fenwick's letter and the notes from the Thwaite account lay folded and visible. Dominic. He came in with his hands extended. His voice was warm. He was good at this, Vera thought. He had probably been good at it all his life. You look better. You are up. I have been up since yesterday, the Earl said. Sit down, Lucian, Mr. Parrish. The chair is there. Mr. Parrish sat. He introduced himself. He explained the nature of the examination in terms that were professional and unthreatening, and designed to make a sick man feel that the proceedings were routine. He asked the Earl several questions: his name, the date, the nature of his illness, the name of the attending physician. Dr. Fenwick, the Earl said, of Carlisle, and Mrs. Vera Salt, who has been in residence for the past 7 days. He paused. Mr. Parrish, before we continue, I would like to put some material before you. Mr. Parrish looked at the table. He looked at Lucian. He said, That is within your rights, Mrs. Salt. Vera brought the papers. She set them on the table in front of Mr. Parrish in order, the letter from Fenwick, with the relevant lines underlined in a hand that was not Fenwick's. The dates from the Thwaite account, written in her own clear printer's script. The expected arrival of Jonas Thwaite at 2:30. She said, Mr. Parrish. These are the purchase records for Dunmore Lodge from the dispensary in Carlisle. They show a regular purchase of foxglove and laudanum beginning in September of this year, entered against the lodge account, signed for by the steward, Mr. Alt. The physician who attended the Earl, Dr. Fenwick, was removed from the case by the steward before he could complete his assessment. He has since written to indicate that he had concerns about the source of the patient's illness and was not permitted to investigate them. She kept her voice the way she kept it in the worst rooms, the rooms where someone was losing something irreplaceable, level, audible, difficult to speak over. The dispensary owner, Mr. Thwaite, will be here in 30 minutes to verify these records in person. The room was quiet. Lucian Parrish, this is. Mr. Harwick, said Mr. Parrish in a voice that had found a different quality than the one he had come in with. Please, I am reading, he read. Lucian stood at the foot of the chair, and his pleasant face did something that Vera watched with attention. It shifted. It found the shape underneath the pleasantness. It was not ugly, exactly. It was simply the face of a man who had made a calculation and was discovering that one of the numbers had been wrong. Mr. Parrish looked up. He looked at the Earl. He looked at Vera. He looked at the door, perhaps thinking of the half-hour until Thwaite arrived. "Mr. Harwick," he said to Lucian, "the account here is signed in your brother's steward's name." "Can you account for that? The steward manages routine purchases," Lucian said. His voice was still reasonable, still warm. "That is the nature of a steward's role. Foxglove is not a routine purchase. It has any number of uses, as a heart tonic. As my brother," said the Earl, "has not been prescribed foxglove. By Fenwick or by anyone else. His letter says so." He set his hand flat on the arm of the chair, the way Vera had seen him, set his hand on the floor on the first night, steadying himself, grounding himself, making sure the floor was there. "Mr. Parrish, I am not of unsound mind. I was being made unwell, and I was not told why, and the person who arranged for the physician to be removed from my case was my steward who answers to my brother." "That is an allegation," Lucian said sharply. "It is," said the Earl. "Mr. Parrish, I would like the magistrate's office to investigate it." Lucian looked at his brother, his half-brother, the man who had the full title and the full property and the name that went back 4 generations, while Lucian had the half-share of the Westmoreland land and a captain's commission that had not been renewed, and a mother who had been the old Earl's second choice and had known it. Vera watched him look. She thought, "He will not confess here. He is not that kind of man," she thought, "but he will not be able to stop it either. The book is on the table, and Thwaite is on the road." Lucian said quietly, "I see." He said nothing else for a moment. Then he said, "I will not contest the welfare examination." Mr. Parrish said, "You will do rather more than that, sir. Constables can be arranged from Hartley. I would advise you not to leave the lodge until Mr. Thwaite has made his statement, and I have written to the magistrate." Lucian sat. He sat very carefully, the way a man sat when the chair was the last solid thing. Frances, from the doorway, said nothing. She had been standing there since Parrish began to read. Her face was the face of a woman who had been waiting for something to be over for a long time, and was finding that its being over was not what she had expected it to be. Vera went to the door. She said quietly, in Frances's ear, "Get Peg. Tell her to make tea, the real kind." Frances made a sound that was almost a laugh. The hearing, such as it was, concluded by 4. Constables arrived from Hartley at 5:30. Alt, confronted by Parrish and the ledger, said very little and then said rather more, in the way of men who were frightened and had been given to understand that cooperation would be noted. He did not, in the end, deny the purchases. He said that he had been asked to arrange them. He said who had asked him. Lucian was escorted from the lodge at 6. He did not look at his brother as he went. He looked at the door and then at the drive and then at the road, as a man might look at things he had expected to own and would not now own. He went quietly. That, Vera supposed, was something. The lodge was very still after the carriages left. Peg made supper. Frances ate it at the kitchen table with Vera, which was not what a woman of Frances's position usually did, and which neither of them remarked on. They ate bread and cold mutton and drank the tea, and the fire in the kitchen range ticked and settled, and outside the wind came off the fell and put its shoulder against the windows. Frances said, "What will you do now?" Vera said. "Go home, I expect. He will want you to stay. He will not ask me again." She set down her cup. "He asked me once. He will not ask twice." Frances looked at her with an expression that was not quite a smile and not quite its opposite. "He asked you before he knew what you were going to do for him. It is the same question regardless, is it?" Vera did not answer. She ate the last of her bread. She went up after supper to say good night, and found the Earl not in the chair but standing at the window, which was the first time she had seen him on his feet without her beside him. He was looking at the drive. He heard her come in but did not turn immediately. "He is gone," Vera said. "Yes." He turned. He looked tired in the way of a man who had been carrying something heavy and had just been told to put it down, and was finding that the putting down was harder than the carrying. "Alt, he will be held for the Carlisle sessions. Thwaite's testimony and Fenwick's letter should be sufficient. Your own account of the illness, when you are ready to give it formally, will help." He nodded. She said, "I am going in the morning." He looked at her. "Peg can manage what remains. Your sister will be here. You are well enough now. Not well, but well enough. And the physician can come back now that Alt is gone." She paused. Fenwick is a careful man. He should have been allowed to finish his work in November. He should, Dominic said. "I should have seen it sooner. You were being prevented from seeing it." "I was." He was quiet. "That is not entirely an excuse," she said. "No, but it is a reason which is different." He looked at her. She had said something like this to him once before, in the first week when he had blamed himself for his sister's illness. Francis, who had come to the lodge in October to visit, and had been unwell for a week after, which Vera now believed had been a miscalculation on Alt's part, or on Lucian's. She had said then, "You were not asked to suspect your own brother, you were asked only to be ill." He had been quiet after that in the particular way of a man who had been given something to think about and intended to think about it. He said now, "Mrs. Salt, Vera." It was the first time he had used her given name. He caught the shift himself, she thought, because he paused on it, just slightly. "I owe you my life. That is not an exaggeration. I am a man who does not exaggerate. I know you are, then you know I mean it plainly. I do, and you are going in the morning." Yes, he was quiet. She turned to pick up her bag, which she had left inside the door. She heard him move, one step too, not quickly, not easily, but steadily. "I want to tell you something," he said. She stopped. She did not put the bag down. "I was told about you by your father-in-law. You may not know that. Christopher Salt's father, who is a friend of the man who sold me the lodge. He told me that you had kept the print shop and were teaching the apprentice and running the account and caring for the boy." He said. He paused. He said she does everything and she never says anything about it. He said it the way a man says something he admires and does not know what to do with. Vera's hands were on the bag. "I have been watching you for 7 days do things that I have never seen anyone do as quietly." His voice was the same, dry, even. "You did not make a performance of it. You did not tell me how difficult it was. You did not tell me what you were doing. You found out. You went at 5 in the morning. You came back, you set it out on the table." He stopped. "I have been in rooms with a great many people who would not have done that. Your sister would have," Vera said. Francis was afraid. "I was also afraid," he said. "I know, that is what I mean." She turned around. He was 3 feet from her, in the lamplight, thinner than he had been on the first night, and steadier than he had been on any night since. His hands were still. The tremor was gone, or nearly. He looked like a man who had been through something and intended to continue. "Will you come back," he said, "not to attend me. I am going to be well. Come back because the Carlisle sessions will be in February, and Fenwick will need a second witness, and you were here for the whole of it, and what you saw matters." He paused. "And because it would be useful, I think, to know you." She thought about the print shop. She thought about Kit, who would have a question she hadn't answered when she got home, and who would forget it 5 minutes after she answered it. She thought about the compositor's stick and the 12 lines about the mill owner that were still waiting in the tray. She thought, he said useful. She thought, he knows me well enough to say useful. February, she said. February. I will see about the Carlisle sessions. She picked up the bag. "Good night, your lordship." "Good night," he said, Vera. She left. She did not look back, because she was a woman who had learned to leave rooms without looking back, and because she did not need to. In the morning, Peg put her in the lodge's covered carriage, and the groom drove her the 4 miles back to Hartley. The fell was white at the top, with the first proper snow of the season, and the valley road was still clear, and the river ran low and bright in the early light. She thought about February. She thought about the sessions and about Fenwick, and about what a second witness's testimony looked like in a formal proceeding. She had typeset enough of them to know. She had set the type for her own husband's inquest 4 years ago in the cold shop in February, with Kit asleep in the back room, and her mother-in-law's hand on her shoulder. She thought, I have done harder things than February. The carriage turned up the main road into Hartley. The print shop was closed, which was correct because it was a Sunday, which she had not realized. She had lost track of the days entirely. She paid the groom from the coin in her coat pocket and stood at the door of the shop and looked at it. The sign, the dark window, the handle that needed replacing and that she had been meaning to replace since September. The door to the attached house opened before she knocked, and Kit was in it, all 4 years of him in his socks, with a piece of bread in one hand. "Mama," he said, "where did you go?" "I was working," she said. "Let me in, it is cold." He stepped back and she came in, and he showed her what he had built with the blocks while she was gone, which took 20 minutes, and her mother-in-law put a plate of eggs in front of her without being asked. And the fire in the kitchen was very warm. And outside, the first snow of the season was coming down over the fell and over the valley, and over the 4 miles of road that ran between Hartley and Dunmore Lodge. She thought, once between the eggs and the fire, "He said it would be useful to know me," she thought. "Yes," she thought, "I expect it will." She ate her breakfast. She did not think about February again that day. She did not need to yet.